it's going to be Steve Cowie. He wrote a book, and it's called, I know the title, it's called When Hell Came to Sharpsburg. And I believe it just came out. Yeah. Anyway, so he's going to speak for us, and it's not even going to be on a Monday, it's going to be on a Thursday. So that's a little different, but we're just going to call it a special McCauley lecture. Also, please come over to the Western Maryland room after the lecture because the room is open, and I did try to create a couple little exhibit cases of ephemera from the Hagerstown Fair. One of the cases is older things that we have in our files, and they're things that people have donated to us, and we'd love for you to come look at it. And I'm sure Raymond will be happy to talk with you or interact. And anyway, we'd love for you to peek in there and see what we have. And also, you can help me understand some of the items because I don't know about everything. So Raymond Holton has lived in Hagerstown all his life, and his interests, other than fairs, also include carnivals and circuses. But before the lecture this evening, he started talking. I said, tell me something about you that I might be able to share. And I understand that some of you in this room will know this very well, but maybe his greatest love is hot rods. And he's built several of them. I guess that's how you say it. And he was telling me, 4, yes. I did ask him a lot of questions, which I won't go into because that's not really the subject of the evening, but I found it very interesting, and he showed me pictures of the ones he's done, and it's amazing. I was very impressed. So he lived near the fairgrounds until he was 10 years old, so he had a lot of opportunity to visit there. So we're really looking forward to his talk this evening on the Hagerstown Fair. Thank you.
A few disclaimers before I start. This is how I remembered it, and the year is going to. And I apologize for overusing the word "cool." It's the word that describes most of my things I talk about, and I wanted to clear that up before I started. So it takes place in 1953-54. I live a block and a half from the fairground. And the first Monday of the fair, this company, Sutton and Wilson, were during that Sunday and Monday morning were working, setting up the fair. And I could hear lots of sounds coming from the fairground that I was accustomed to, but there was a unique sound I never heard before. We're walking up to school, to Broadway School, and we actually said, "What's making that sound?" Well, I said, "We'll find out after a while." So we couldn't wait till 3:30 when we got out of school then. And 3:30 finally got there, and down the street we ran, a block away from the school, into the house. Says, "Mother, I'm going to the fairground." She said, "I figured you would be, so just be careful and be back by the time the street lights come on." You've all heard that phrase. So out the door I went, and out front was waiting for me my buddies Terry and Butch Beer. Down Fairground Avenue we went. We're going down, enter that gate right there, Fairground Avenue entrance. And running down the street, I was hoping my stepfather's brother was a Hagerstown policeman, and he would take a leave of absence during the fair, and he was the security on that gate. If he was there, we're in. If he wasn't, we would have to go outside about this area in the farmer's field, as we called it, and under the fence. Hopefully Harry, his name's Harry, is there, Harry House. So all I had to do was find him and make eye contact. And there he was. He was standing there and he gave me the old.
Yeah.
We would enter this side of the gate because there was a ticket box on that side of the gate, around the corner of the gate, and we went right across the street to this building.
Oh, yeah.
Building. There was every kind of bird in the world in this building, and to us young kids. And the first place we would run to is a plywood box with chicken wire and all these lights, and in there was chicken eggs. And sometime during the week, those eggs were going to hatch. 10-year-old kids couldn't figure out how did they know those eggs were going to hatch. And we cautiously looked around for cracks, and there was none visible, so we'll check it tomorrow. We'll be back. So anyhow, we run through this chicken house, and I was very impressed with pigeons. You know, the only pigeons city kids would see are those kind of land on your roof. They had pigeons, unbelievable pigeons. They had feathers on their feet, feathers on their necks, and big pigeons, white pigeons, little pigeons, doves, and of course chickens, roosters, and peacocks, and peahens, and pheasants, and so on. So anyhow, we went down through that building and came out a door that was situated right there and around into this building. This was actually nothing but an enclosed or an arena used for judging the livestock. On each end of the arena was a grandstand, and in between was, I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was a covering they would put on the arena, and they referred to it as tambar, from the tannery in Williamsport, and it had a real nice, unique smell to it. It was a pleasant smell, and I always, of course, by the end of the week, the smell sort of drifted away, but the first couple of nights, I really appreciated that. Right in this area, was a concession stand to take care of people frequenting this area around here. And leaving that concession stand, you would enter this area here, which was typically farm machinery. And what was cool about that, everything that had a steering wheel and a seat on, we managed to sit in it. And we would pull a switch or push a switch, pull a lever, and occasionally something would actually happen. A light would come on, something would fall. And what was very cool about it was nobody seemed to care that we were doing this. That was really special. And there was all kinds of tractors, the green kind, the blue kind, the yellow kind, and the red kind. My favorite were the blue kind. And then they were these monster farm machines that we had no clue what they did, but it was really, really neat to climb all over them. And then right in this area here were new cars. And in the fall of the year, back in those days, the introduction of new cars was a big deal. And they took advantage of the people coming to the fair to show off. And it was usually the top 3 automakers and from local dealers. And right about here, the blacktop went to grass, and it's still like this. And they would have small, kind of like things like this one, and they were typically politicians or union type promoting their wares or promoting their candidates or so forth, and giving away, free stuff for the kids and all. There's our grandstand in the background. And then from here to here was downhill, and we would take off running. to this place. This place was one of our favorite exhibits. This is actually the exit stairs. Over to the right of that was the entrance stairs. And it was one of the nicest model railroad exhibits ever that I've seen. And we would, through this, between the years, they would make slight improvements and additions to this display, and we would try to find those new parts of it. Sometimes we would get into arguments, not agreeing that was there last year. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. Anyhow, we would wind your way through that exhibit, and there was no admission, but at this door was a jar where they would gladly accept donations, which we never saw that jar. And down those steps we came. Now, from that building up to this point is uphill. So we would run uphill. Another view of it from the street side. It was also the main entrance to the fair. Up at the top of that hill was this Sutter's Saltwater Cafe. They were there every year for years. And I was intrigued with that machine and this machine he is operating. This was the taffy holder. You probably still can find these at the beach. I just thought it was the neatest thing to watch. And then he would take that taffy on his table over here and roll it into a long steak-like shape and run it through this wrapper, and these kisses, as they were called, fell out, and he would make different flavors, and all along this front edge were just different flavors. You could get a mixed bag or a non-mixed bag, and we would stand there staring 5 minutes, hoping he would say, "Here, kids, have one." Never happened. Okay, so right here, where you would enter off of Cannon Avenue, was this guy. They had catch the people coming through the entrance way. Right out of that, catch them. How the kid. Whoops. What happened? Anyhow, and right here at the top of this Midway is going to continue down. Right at the top was this large box fan where the tailgate folded down and formed the stage. And they had a mom, or I assume the husband and wife, and they would have an auction. And they had small kitchen appliances typically, and they would auction off one of those and then ask if anybody else would like to have one for that same price. And that's where I saw my first pop-up toaster. At the toaster we had over there on Locust Street, you toasted one side at a time, open the sides, and at the same time burning your fingertips. And you would flip the bread over and close it and do the other side, and you couldn't leave it. You had to stand there or else up in smoke. So anyhow, they also had my first hand mixer and things like that. You wouldn't think a 10-year-old kid would care about that kind of junk, but I thought it was a pretty good idea he had there. On the left-hand side of the Midway, going downhill, were food stands. And they were huge tents manned by like the Roritan or a church. And I can always remember one had the word Downsville. I don't know if it was a Downsville Christian Church or Downsville something, but it was always along there. And down at the bottom, excuse me, in future years, not in the 50s, but in future years, right there at that point was a beer tent. And you could actually buy beer but you had to drink it there. You couldn't carry it around the fairground. To the right of it, before this building was built, was horse stalls for the annual races, horse races, and that was torn down. And years later, this is up into the '60s, with a steel building, and it had exhibits in it of people, usually churches, and either trying to make, deliver their message or sell you something. But then that was later demolished. And so at this point here, that is going up to the racetrack. These folks are standing next to the rail of the racetrack, probably watching a Daredevil show. That far down the racetrack, it would have to be something like that. Anyhow, from this point on, there was all kind of exhibits and local stuff going on. And I put this up here to show you the carnival train in color. This wasn't taken in Hagerstown, but this was the carnival that came. And this train was unloaded in the south end on Doringer Avenue and Spruce Street. Later on in the video, I'll show you a picture of them loading it, reloading it. And they would take all of this stuff. This is just a small portion of the carnival. And they would move this stuff across town, out Locust Street, to the fairground, and then return down Potomac Street on Sunday night. Right here in this area was the bingo tent. It was there for years, regardless of the carnival. They always seemed to put that bingo tent right there. And it was, of course, probably the only honest game on the Midway. From here to there, this is all carnival. Everything is the carnival that was on that train. And from that point to this point were games of chance and skill. And you only won if they wanted you to win. And they would want you to win early in the evening. So your girlfriend could carry this big teddy bear around the fairground, and all the other girls were egging her boyfriends, why don't you win one of those for me? Well, they didn't were as lucky. And sometimes every year, around the middle of the week, there would be a story in our local paper where people were calling the police and saying, you got to do something about these people at that fair. They ripped us off, they took all our money, and so on. So they would visit the fair board office, but the fair board would say, well, we don't have anything to do with that. But they would talk to them, but it didn't make anybody any, or it didn't matter. They didn't change anything. Then, across from here, right in here, was this empty raceway. This was one of the coolest things to me on that Midway. They had these little metal cars. They worked like a slot car does nowadays. And they had these monkeys that would put them with little crash helmets on them. And you would pay to go in there instead of the little grandstand. And they would have this group and the monkeys had absolutely no control over them. But they would go around checking everybody out. Wondering what's going on. And they did it a zillion times a night. There's another picture of Oliver Godfrey doing Chipwood. Some funny names. And next to it was this pony suite, owned by the carnival. City kids don't get a chance to ride a pony only but one day a week or 1 week a year, and it's pretty popular. Yeah. All through this area here were kiddie rides, small mechanical rides for small children only. And this round circle represents that tree right there. That merry-go-round was set under that tree, next to that tree every year for 20 years. And it was a very nice mobile merry-go-round, as you can see. And it was, of course, anybody could ride it. And I want you to note the way they were dressed in the 50s. Rolled up jeans on these girls, white socks, everybody had white socks on, saddle shoes, and so on. Nobody had shorts. You don't see a pair of shorts anywhere. Next, up this hill, from here, yours uphill, and at the top of the hill was this establishment. We figured it was a water show of some kind for adult men. Anyhow, you might see, well, someone in this room might be standing there. Anyhow, next to it was a sideshow, as they're called, but show folk, carnival folk, call them a 10-in-1. It actually had 10 individual shows inside for one admission. And they had 10 different small stages, and they had all kind of interesting people in there. They had a sword swallower, a guy that ate fire. They had a guy with tattoos all over him. Imagine that. Next to him, they had a guy called a faker, F-A-K-I-R. They always came from India. Do I need this?
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyhow, fakers in India love to put things through their skin. He had piercings in his nose, his lips, his cheek, his whatever. And that's weird that he would do that. So then, next to him was a bearded lady. If you saw the movie,
Greatest show.
yeah, you'll get an idea of what a bearded lady looks like. And then next to her was Miss Electra. How they did this, I don't know. They had a platform she would stand in, and they would hand her light bulbs, and they would light up fluorescent tube, and it would light up. Pretty amazing stuff. And then they would have a very tall guy and a very small guy, mostly dressed like a clown. And next to him, they would have a young lady with a snake and so on wrapped around her. And anyhow, while the show was in progress, after the first couple of people did their thing, they would go out on that stage in front, and the person doing, this is called a ballet stage. The guy is a ballet person, and he would do a ballet, which is try to convince people to come inside. And they would go out there one by one and do their thing. And if you would stand there all evening long, you would see the whole show for free, except for Miss Electra. She never came out. Next to her, the Zambora, the Gorilla Girl. This was pretty interesting. I saw this many times, and it always amazes you where with smoke and mirrors, this lady standing right in front of you would change into a gorilla. Very neat. And then we had another monkey fight show where it's just a bunch of different types of primates and doing different tricks. And then we had this place. Ika. If you lived anywhere near the fairground, the years that Ika came to town, you was so annoyed by the ballet. They had a recorded ballet tape, never ending, that would continuously go Ika, 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 up until 11 o'clock. You listen, Ika, along with all the other noises of the fair. And Ika was pretty interesting. It had a plywood box, and she had more clothes on than that in the box. And they would put chickens, live chickens, and live snakes in with Ika, and that's as far as I'm going with that. However, Ika was pretty, she was ugly as can be, dirty, but then, down somewhere down in South Pacific where they always find these people, it was where it's always sunny, but Ika had access to sunscreen, obviously. Anyhow, next to that was another one of these places. Won't get into. Oh, there's one of the stars of that attraction. And then we have fun houses. Moving on down, all the shows at the Hagerstown Midway were on the right-hand side. This was pretty flat on this side next to the racetrack, but then we gradually go uphill. So they put all the shows on the right-hand side because all the mechanical rides required a flat as possible surface to erect them on. So this was one of my favorite. This motorcycle in the middle here would be on a set of rollers, and these daredevils would come out and start it up, put it in gear, and get it turning the wheels, and actually do tricks on it. Stand on the seat, side saddle, and so forth. They had a siren on it that with the roar of the engine, and the siren was pretty impressive. And the guy on the valley stage was talking to you, and you go in to watch them, and it was a cylindrical structure where these motorcycles would actually ride on the walls as they go around. And I, for years, thought they were Indians, American Indians, because all of these motorcycles had Indian on the side of them. We didn't know the difference for a while. Anyhow, here they are inside, both male and female. You're standing there looking over the wall. They come up and try and get as close as they can to give you a thrill. And it's very interesting. There's actually 3 of these still in existence, traveling to the major motorcycle shows in Canada and the U.S. Oh, this represents a show that was like a show where the whole family could go in and enjoy. It was where they had a live band, dancers, jugglers, and comedians and so on. And then they would, the grand finality would be a burlesque number by a, beautiful woman in this beautiful dress. And she would burlesque around the stage to a drum beat, and she would burlesque down to about 4%. And then the announcer would come out on the stage and said, "Thank you folks for coming. Tell your friends about it. This ends our show." And next to it was the fun house. This is that hill I was telling you about in the background. And all up and down the center section of the main Midway were show-owned concessions and games, penny pitch and so on, games of chance. And when we got to the end of that Midway here, we would take off running down to this building. This building was unique where it had all the small barnyard animals. And what was unique about it was in the corner was a staircase. They went up to a promenade. They circled the entire upper area, and you could look down on all the stalls below you. And those lucky farm kids, they would come in and set up a small stall with nothing but living cots to sleep on and cabinets to keep their clothes in. And they were the luckiest kids in Washington County that week, where they got to stay at the fair all week long, every night. Man, it's cool to be there. right after checking out the pigs, goats, and lambs, and so on, we run back up to this Midway. Now we're going to start coming this way. And right at the corner, the garage was started. I found these pictures on the internet, and they were photographed by a friend of mine who's since passed. This is obviously a swing, and then we had that octopus ride. And notice the girls, no shorts in sight.
Yeah.
And t-shirts on the boys and jeans, typical hoodlums. Then there was this ride. I liked this a lot, although it made me extremely sick. It went around very quickly, fast, and then it had a cover that came up and enveloped the whole endless train, and which seemed like very fast. I mean, it was unbelievably fast, and for that few minutes you're covered up, you had a chance to sneak a little kiss on the cheek or something. And then next to it was the Rolo plane, as they referred to it. And then here's a sign I added in here showing how they would erect these things. Very primitive block and tackle type tools and stuff. And everything was extra heavy, very dangerous work. And then, of course, everybody got sick on this ride over the years until the world. And then there were the Ferris Wheel. Back in Chicago in 1939, George Washington Ferris created the first Ferris Wheel. He had the Eli Bridge Company make the structure, and he was a mechanical engineer. And each one of these coaches held 36 people, and there were 30 of them on there. Do the math. And it was powered by 2 high horsepower steam engines. After the fair, they dismantled it and took it to St. Louis and put it up in St. Louis for several years. And then they dismantled it for good. However, the Eli Bridge Company quit building bridges and started building portable Ferris wheels. And they did it up till just maybe 20 years ago. And occasionally you'll go to a carnival that still has an Eli Ferris wheel operating today. Then we have a haunted house. And whatever this was, I don't actually remember it, but next to it, this is the very end of the coming back down at Midway. And it's, I lost my light. Oh, no. It's right here. These guys are building what they call a wet boat ride. They're making this circle, and then they'll fill it up with water. Actually have boats floating in the water, and they had arms that came out from this axle, which was powered through this drive line to a gasoline engine. There were no electric motors on the show. There were very few large generators, only enough to do the lighting, and everything had its independent engine on it. And why I added this, right behind this trailer was the underpass into the infield before they increased the size of the racetrack. Some overhead shots, early shots you'll see on Facebook, will show that brutally right there. I'm not sure if it was wide enough for an automobile, but it was wide enough for walk horses and so on to bring the right race week. Now we take off at a young boy runs back up the Midway to this point right here, which is up that direction. And we're going to go up to the clubhouse. Under the clubhouse, they had 4-H and FFA exhibits, lots of them. They were very nice to look at. I loved how clever these kids were every year coming up with these new ideas. Everything was related to agriculture, of course. And under the grandstand side on the ground floor for exhibits. This is a pretty interesting photograph, and this was Hill's Toy and Novelty Store exhibit. Everything on those shelves is now on eBay for 10 times. My special interest is this little steamroller. I don't think I've ever seen one. That is really cool. The fire truck, steam shovel back there. Anyhow, that was my favorite store. It was situated between the Henry Theater and the Maryland Theater. You could enter from the alley or the street. And every time we go downtown, we made a point to go through there. This exhibit was on the upper level of the grandstand. Most of the businesses, or major businesses in town, would put in exhibits and put lots of effort into them and money. As you can see, this WJEJ exhibit, it took a while to set up. They probably used it over and over for years. The original WJEJ out there on Haven Road, but downtown in Court, what was the name of that building? Franklin Court, where they had teenage dances back in the day. Their offices were in there for a while. Also, the fair at that time, because they could secure the stage area, had shows that cost extra to watch. And they got a lot of income from that. However, when they increased the size of the racetrack, they moved to the east and to the north. And when they did that, they eliminated the necessary acreage needed for the carnival. So they started putting the carnival inside the infield. And this is when I always said they should have removed the word great out of the Great Hagerstown Fair. It no longer was great to me. Now they could not secure the grandstand area from keeping people from just meandering over there to see whatever was being on the stage. So they didn't do it, except for Saturday night, they would have a Daredevil show. And in 53 and 54, Ward Dean was the Daredevil of choice. Later on, you'll remember it was Joey Chitwood and Jack Crutchman, all drivers. One time in my lifetime, they had a Daredevil competition where they had 3 shows at the fairground all at the same time for a special admission, and they would compete against each other doing the same stunts. And then the people in the grandstand by applaud would choose the best one. And they were very interesting names for the shows, and they were different, always different model cars. Basically, the top 3 car manufacturers would sponsor them with whatever car they chose. Okay, here's a picture in action. This is our grandstand, and you get a good shot of that east side parking area. There was a lot of people in attendance this particular day. It was packed, and this was a stunt being performed by, I think it's Joey Chitwood on the side of that truck. And that was probably an early 50s car. They would use cars purchased from local junk salvage car dealers to break up and roll over and crash, but they would never use the same model cars as they were driving. They didn't want Chevrolets crashing into Chevrolets. It's always a Ford or Plymouth or something. Same with all of them. Okay, here the end of this week, and the show is being dismantled and moved across town to the south end to be loaded. And here we are at Spruce Street and Garlinger. When I started my talk, going up the street, wondering what the sound was I was hearing, this picture is the answer. That machine right there. I heard the noise those metal tracks make when they're running and driving in ocean. And it was like screeching, like your fingernails on the chalkboard type sounds. And so my question was answered. The only time I ever saw anything like that was in movies with army tanks or something. I never knew they had a tractor you could purchase with those types of tracks on. But it was a tedious job pulling these heavy wagons down the whole length of that train and loading and chaining them down and leave town on Sunday and be at the next town Sunday night. Start putting it up late Sunday and early Monday morning. So that ends my talk. We did this every night at the fair, and on, like, say, Friday, we were there most of the afternoon and evening. And when the fair wasn't in town or anything else was on, we always were at the fairground. That was our playground, along with the farmer's field to its north end. And we experienced the Fairchild picnic, and they would have them there, although none of our family worked at the Fairchild picnic. We would stand right around the grandstand here, and as people were leaving, ask for their unused coupons, hot dogs and so forth. And we picked out one of them. So anyhow, thank you for coming, and I'm glad I got a chance to share this with you. I hope I stirred some memories. And anybody have any questions? Joanna?
Yes. I can't remember, I lived on East Avenue. We could walk to school Broadway, and didn't the schools get off on Friday? Was it a whole day or half a day?
I thought it was a half day, but I may be wrong.
Yeah.
I knew they were.
And I think it was a half a day.
I
And
thought
I remember when I was so sick.
Yes.
Connie McCauley lived in Vista Street,
Mhm.
and we crawled in that fence.
Yeah.
And I saw Jerry Lee Lewis
Oh.
on that there, and he did a terrific show. And as we were coming out of the entrance there at Cannon, you could see where his company was in there, and they had booze all over, when they were doing it, but that was quite a history.
Anybody else want to share a memory? Yes, sir.
I remember that tall vertical line on the left. That's where the farmers kept their cows.
Oh, yes, I forgot to touch on it.
Yeah, I remember walking along that, just seeing all kinds of cows.
Yeah, that building was 2 blocks long. It was Fairground Avenue, Wayside Avenue, and Fairground Avenue.
Broadway.
What was the other one?
Broadway.
Broadway. At least 2 blocks. And again, those lucky farm kids would be living out every 10th place, man. I thought, wow, how lucky are they? And yes, you're right. That's where they kept the large livestock.
You know what, Raymond? I lived on a 600 block in North Mulberry, right across the street, and my neighborhood friends would get jobs, although they didn't get paid, but they would sleep in those stalls
Oh, yeah?
and be there all day and all night.
Yeah.
I thought it smelled terrible. I never wanted to do that. Same with that poultry and that bird thing you showed in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
That smelled really bad. I don't Didn't linger in there.
No,
Do you have any pictures of Machinery Road?
no, I don't. No. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was fine. Yes, Brian?
That last slide, where is that located?
All right, that's
And
good.
are there still any tracks
Yes,
still there?
there's one track there back when this was, there was 2. And I remember riding out Potomac Street with my family. Anyhow,
You talking about the one at Garlinger and Spruce?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Garlinger and Spruce.
Yeah,
It's
right there.
See, they had 2 tracks and these flight cars, would remain throughout the week on this siding here. And it went from where Startsman's Hardware was, clear down across the, Trestle over.
That's why they unloaded there, because they didn't leave the cars.
Exactly,
on the
yeah.
track. Because I thought there was a railroad track that went into the fairground.
Yeah, these tanks here are still there. These buildings are changed a little. But the house where this person was standing, taking his shots is still there. And when I came across that, I went, wow, I can't believe this found this. I have a bunch more of them when they were going all that. Any other comments? Anyone share anything? Jane, you said you entered.
From when Joel died, I took over, 1974 to 1981. I showed beef cattle,
Right.
and I slept in those.
Yes, you were one of the lucky
But we thought it was so cool.
Yes.
I mean, who else got to do that?
Exactly. Point out that city guy that lived in town a block away, he would have loved to have been over there.
And then they also had, so we had beef cattle, and then there's also the dairy. So the dairy was at the far end, the beef was at this end. And it was locked down. At nighttime, they would lock all the gates. So if you were there, you were there. But you woke, the one thing I remember, the first couple of years, you woke up with little spots all over your face, and we didn't realize it was fly poop.
Again, why I didn't do that. Well, then maybe you guys weren't that lucky. Lucky kid, they come out.
The one thing I was gonna ask though, Raymond, is, we were kind of mischievous. You were there all day, all night. And I would go to Pat's house on Liberty Street and take showers.
Right.
But there was a gentleman that was in those buildings, and he pretty much chased us out more than once. And I always wondered about him, because it looked like he lived there.
Oh, my goodness.
And then I was looking in those photos, but I didn't see any of those.
Yes, sir.
How long was that poultry house there? I mean, I lived on the end of Mulberry in the 60s. I don't remember that poultry house being
Yes,
there.
Curtis.
It was there in the middle 60s, I know that.
Yeah.
Raymond,
Yes.
that poultry hall, the building was there at least in 26, because I've got a blueprint that shows the fairgrounds in 26. At that time, that was the poultry hall. Before it was poultry hall, it was a carriage shed.
Oh, okay. That building right there.
Yes, and that was there through the end of the Hagerstown Fair, which was about 80 or 81. And then after the city purchased the fairgrounds is when it was torn down.
I see, okay.
When was the last fair?
I
I remember going there in '86.
Yeah, 86.
First date my husband and I. '86, I remember going there, my first date with my husband, '86.
Yes, Marion?
Let's be back and see those eggs all hatched,
Excuse me?
those eggs.
The eggs hatched?
Oh, yeah, we would check them every day, and sooner or later, they started popping out. They by Thursday or Friday, they were all hatching little peepies everywhere.
And then they grow very
Anyone else?
What time of year, what month?
It was September 23rd or
Oh.
27th, that was it.
And then when we did it, it was in August.
Yeah.
I have a sort of unrelated question. Does anybody remember when we started wearing shorts? I thought in the mid-50s, I was 5 and 55, and I remember trying a pair of shorts, but I think all the boys called me names, so I went back to long pants. But I don't know when shorts became.
We were doing as Bermuda. Yeah, that's what I.
I just wonder when shorts came around.
Yes.
I lived in Big Pool
and I didn't get to Hagerstown till I was 16 years old. But I did go to the fair twice. One time I was at that motorcycle thing. That was amazing. They come right up to the top. You thought they just keep on going. And a little later on, I did go to a couple of the reviews. One of them called the Copper Tone Review. They had some pretty ladies in there. Well dressed.
Yeah, there. This was before the Copper Tone Review, but this was African-American cast, and they played rhythm and blues. This was the birth of the rock and roll. They started out, these thoughts, and remember, this was 1953. And later, like you said, Joanne, earlier, the Copper Tone Review was a regular show there. Yeah. But it was a same type as that other show featuring white people.
Actually went to the Copper Tone
Yeah.
review.
Yeah.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
Until she applied for work.
Great finale. I remember they had cool names like Joey Pepper and
Yeah, chili.
little
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
So on and so on.
Why was it sold?
Uh-huh.
Why was it sold?
Where, around?
Why was it sold, she said. Jane, was the ground sold, I mean, the fairground?
I don't know. Well, it had like everything, business just fell off. And it went over.
They take the races away.
Yeah, well, when they took the stage shows, and when the two, that was a lot of income. Today's carnivals and fairs depend on those live performances. They can't work.
Because when we showed steers, you showed in August and then you sold in middle of September at the livestock auction. And when they stopped the fair, it was a real hardship with 4-H people because then you didn't have the opportunity to experience the showmanship.
Anybody else have any comments? Yes, sir.
The first building of the grandstand,
Uh-huh.
the one closest to Cannon Avenue, the police athletic league took it over, and there was a butcher shop in the upper floor.
Oh, yeah?
Any idea who used that?
No, I have no idea. I don't, anybody?
I went there, I didn't go into a lot of things, but as I got older, around 1960, I have a lot of farmer friends in the area, and we knew Bonnie and Bob Ferry, and they would bring the cattle in, and Bob would spend the night. You spend the night with the cattle, that was a big thing, and the Ruritan, worked at the Ruritan in that time, but it was nice.
Anybody else? Yes.
I remember always trying to get the brass ring on the merry-go-round.
Yeah.
I think it gets you a free ride.
Yes, Maria?
Do they have horse racing during the fair?
Not during the fair, no. So if you all would like to spend the remainder of your evening over in the Western Maryland room, correct?
Sure.
And
Come visit if you are able, and thank you so much.
You're welcome.